Hello, everyone, and welcome to Appen Media's Georgia Politics Podcast. I'm Lyndsey Coates, and today we are welcoming in and celebrating Pride Month. I'm happy to introduce someone I've known for a couple years now, Noel, Heatherland, and they are an LGBTQ activist and advocate and has done a lot of big work with Georgia Equality, but here today is themselves. And we also have Jennifer Donlon of Roswell Empowered that started last year and has grown incredibly during that time. I'm also proud to call her a dear friend and Roswell neighbor. So welcome, Noel and Heather.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's dive in. We're going to be talking about LGBT the LGBTQ legislation that was going through the legislature this past session. We're also going to talk about other ways that you've been involved, the organizations that you're involved in, and what events and activities we can look forward to in June. So, Noel, you've been on the front lines of advocacy work in Georgia for years. So, tell us about that work, how you got involved and started.
Sure. So, hello, everyone. Noel Heatherland. I feel most affirmed by they, them pronouns. And I currently work as the statewide organizing and outreach manager for Georgia Equality and also involved in a couple of different spaces. But probably the thing we want to celebrate the most is our legislative session here in Georgia ended back in April. It usually runs from January to April here. And there were 15 anti-LGBTQ plus bills introduced. And along with the support and camaraderie from different organizations and legislators, we defeated all 15 of those anti-LGBTQ plus bills.
Excellent, excellent. And we are going to get into those for sure. So thank you.
Yeah.
Jennifer, Roswell as a North Fulton burb, it's typically not seen as very progressive. Maybe we are more so than the other northern burb cities, but the movement in the last year has really taken root, and a lot of that is due to you and your work in with Roswell Empowered. Tell us how that got started, what was the spark?
If I'm very honest, the spark was fear. Um, I found myself kind of spiraling, watching the news every day and planning, do I need to look up the best country to go with my son? Because I don't know if I should necessarily keep on living here. But then I just decided that I wanted to show my son Clark that it's important to make your home home, to not always run. So that was kind of the spark. And so last May we did a May Day protest in the rain in Roswell and had 140 people show up in the rain. And then Roswell Empowered was not a thing yet. It was just something that I decided to do. And from there, I met people like you, Lyndsey, and got involved with Roar and decided to do a pride walk in Roswell and had 600 people show up to
It was
that.
insane.
And
It was awesome.
it just has kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, yeah. It was one of those events where you look around after living here for so long, like I have, and you're just like, oh my God, this is phenomenal. This is great community. This is exactly the inclusivity that I want my kids to see and that kind of thing. So it really was fantastic. When you two think about why 2026 may feel different, more urgent, more electric than even like 5 years ago, what do you feel about that? What comes to mind? At Noel, start with you.
Yeah, I wanted to actually go back to a little bit because Jennifer inspired me with her answer to realize I really didn't tell you how I got started
Yeah,
in
please.
this. And so I'm going to actually give a succinct answer to that and then jump into your question. I think that it's important in these times, it's kind of relevant to the question you just asked, that I grew up in a religious cult. I grew up in a white Christian nationalist cult, and we're seeing the rise of that a lot right now. And so growing up in that, I pretty much was sheltered from the LGBTQ plus community and didn't have access to any knowledge about our existence other than being told that people who were in same sex relationships were evil and sinful and going to hell and all of that. That was my only exposure. I didn't know anyone. I didn't even know our history. I was banned. Basically, I say I grew up with book bans, and television bans and all of that in my own home. So I was really lacking a sense of belonging. And I talk a lot about the importance of authenticity and belonging. And I think for me, that's what really has inspired me to do this work and to see how important it is in 2026 to still be doing LGBTQ plus advocacy, because I think there is or was a sense that we won the right to marry, we have marriage equality, and so we're good. And we're really seeing that there is still a lot of racism, homophobia, transphobia, and just really a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. And so I think what I hope to do now that, I am able to live as my true self, and I went through this whole period where thankfully I was able to get out of the religious cult environment around age 18. I went to the University of Georgia. I think my parents still blame the University of Georgia for me turning out to be a queer, but I am who I am. And thankfully, though, I was able to start connecting with other people and see that there's a lot of wonderful people in the LGBTQ plus community. We're just people like anyone else. Maybe a little better sometimes, but no, we're like everybody else. And we've just had to fight. A lot of us have had to build a lot of resilience and strength because we are often bullied and attacked. And I think for me, I think back to being a queer kid in that environment, because even back then, I knew I was different. I just didn't really understand how. And I thought there was something really wrong with me. And I really worry about youth growing up in these times. And I also am very, very adamant about healthcare as something everyone should be able to access equally. And that is a fight that we're even seeing among, the T and the LGBTQ plus, trying to have healthcare taken away for both adults and young people. And so that's what both kind of is a part of my personal journey into this work, as well as what I feel is so important in these times that we're living through.
That's a great point. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts on where we are today in 2026 and your feelings about progress that we're making or where we're at with this fight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm nowhere near as involved and in depth as
Right.
them. So I think that in a way I represent kind of the common person. So you rely on what you see on social media and what you hear from other people. Right now, there's a lot of division on social media and what you hear from other people. So sometimes it feels like you take one step forward, two steps back,
Yeah.
doing things like this. Um, but I do think that things like getting places like Roswell,
Mhm.
Sandy Springs, Johns Creek, Milton, to
Eventually, we'll get
have
there.
to have events that celebrate what I like to say, kind of echoing what Noel was saying, is like gay people are just as boring as you all. We just
Fair.
want to have a festival with a bounce house that our kids can jump in.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's really not anything that crazy. So I think the what is important in 2026 and has always been important, but more so now than ever, is just the normalization
Mhm.
of different people. Um, Whether that be somebody that, practices a
Family
different
structure.
religion than you, has a different family structure, um, different sexuality, doesn't know their sexuality. I think it's important to just normalize our differences and celebrate them. And so I think that 2026, that's the urgency. I think the more that you normalize things, the less division that there is.
Yeah. Yeah, it is nice. I mean, you used to have to go into the city to find a drag brunch or things like that. And it is becoming more normalized and growing outward. And it's great to see. So that's a great
Yeah.
point on normalcy. Let's get into the legislative session. And this is going to be a lot more geared towards you, Noel, since you are down there a lot more. But you mentioned the 15 bills that were all defeated. And you posted, we did it. Like, one, talk to me about the feeling that day or days when you realize like every single one were done. And then I know it did not happen by accident. This is years in the making, and this session in particular, you just had your people show up. So talk to me about one, that feeling that day or those days, and then two, about getting people to show up and mobilizing.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. And, it's interesting when you started asking me about thinking about legislative session, I started feeling my heart beat so rapidly because there is so much. Jennifer mentioned the word fear. And I think being not only a person who is a part of the community, I personally identify as a non-binary lesbian. I am a hardcore lesbian who happens to use they, them pronouns and feels that my gender is more expansive than maybe the average lesbian. So I have a little bit of a complex identity. It's not complex to me, but for some people it's complex. But being a part of the community and also being a person who is on the front lines attempting to fight to protect our community, it is a lot of personal emotion, and it is really driven by this feeling of I am fighting for myself and also thousands of other people that I may or may not know, but a lot of them I feel like I do know. And I think about every person's family. I think about a lot of people's personal stories. Jennifer talked about, the importance of normalizing. And that's why I'm a huge advocate for learning how to tell your story effectively and finding those opportunities to tell your story, because storytelling is a huge way that we help other people who may be introduced to a LGBTQ plus person, especially a trans or gender expansive person for the first time. Unfortunately, it's not always safe to tell our stories, so we have to make those choices. But I do think about all those stories, and those stories are really helpful. Sometimes we even share those stories as part of our campaigns, either for or against certain pieces of legislation. So anyway, my heart started beating really fast because, especially thinking back to 2025, which was the prior legislative session, we had 20 anti-LGBTQ plus bills introduced. So thankfully, there were 5 fewer this year, but I think it was just because they did get a couple passed in 2025. But 2025 was so horrific that there were many days that there were several people from our staff present at the Capitol, and we all had to be in different rooms at the same time for different pieces of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. There were multiple days like that. So going into 2026, I was carrying all of that trauma from what we endured in 2025. And just really with the political climate, it's really hard to have your own personal well-being as a queer person, as an activist and advocate, when you're getting almost daily attacks from the federal government, from the president himself. It's really difficult. And I know that all of our community is facing that. So we're all carrying that through the legislative session. And thankfully, this year, we were able to really benefit from different legislators that we have relationships with. Georgia Equality has worked really hard to help identify and get elected certain legislators who are either from the community themselves or who are allies and are able to be inside the rooms where it happens. And so because of that, they are able to do not just negotiations, but also that storytelling piece. I think back to Representative Carla Drenner, who was, I believe, the first open lesbian to be elected to the Georgia House of Representatives. And she tells a story about how when she first went into the legislature, people were shunning her, not really wanting to speak to her as they would other legislators. And eventually, after years passed, one of the legislators who was a conservative man told her, when you first came in here, I didn't think you were worth getting to know, but I've changed my mind. And I think, it's a sad story to hear, but it's also a hopeful one that there is possibility for progress and change. And those types of relationships inside the Capitol are important So I'll just plug really quick. It's really important who you vote for, because who you have inside the Capitol, especially when it comes to a marginalized community, is huge. The other piece I'll mention is coalitions. It's really important that we don't work in silos. And while we may be focused on protecting the LGBTQ plus community, we also know that our fight is shared with those in the reproductive justice space. And so the relationships that we have in working alongside, folks like Feminist Center for Reproductive Liberation, Reproductive Freedom for all of these different repro groups, and many more that are willing to say, you know what, this is about bodily autonomy.
Mhm.
And if you are a supporter of reproductive justice healthcare, then you are a supporter of gender affirming care. You are a supporter of trans and gender expansive people being able to make decisions with their doctors, with their medical providers. So the My Body, My Choice applies equally to those seeking reproductive health care as much as it does for trans people seeking gender affirming care. So, understanding your partners and the ways that we can support each other in shared fights was a huge part of our win in 2026. And then additionally, I will say that, Georgia Equality, we're not a perfect organization. No organization is perfect, but we are the leading LGBTQ advocacy organization for the state of Georgia. We've been doing this for about 30 years. And there, in my opinion, is no one better doing legislative advocacy for LGBTQ plus people than Georgia Equality. And so I appreciate when LGBTQ plus folks and our allies understand that Georgia Equality is working on strategy and networking and building plans 24/7 around all of this. And while each person is autonomous and able to choose how they want to navigate legislative session or how they want to be involved in the fight, I do think it's important to look to organizations who are experts and to trust organizations that have been vetted over time, that they are looking at strategy and that they are making decisions. Sometimes it's a matter of we want folks to come down to the Capitol and have lobbying days. And some days it's about, no, we're actually working on this on the back end. And so we're not going to have a press conference today. And sometimes that can land, where people are trying to figure out what's going on. But it's about understanding that we have a team of folks who are really dedicated to protecting our people. And sometimes that's more internal and sometimes that's more external activity. So those are some of the things that I would say that, helped us have the win. But I remember on the night of Sine Die, which just means the last day of session, I remember standing around the television screens outside the galleries and watching what was happening. And, sometimes they go until like 1 or 2 in the morning, and you're just holding your breath because sometimes the last day of session is the day that they will pull something through. And I just remember standing there and thinking, we did it, and letting out this like breath of relief and hugging one of my coworkers. And we actually like jumped up and down with joy. And it was out of the fact that like we survived, and it's like I'm finding emotion in my voice when I'm talking, but it's like we pulled off this session without another anti-LGBTQ bill coming through. And, I'm okay with showing my emotion about that because it is like, these are people's lives on the line. This is people's healthcare. And like right now, so many people in Georgia are suffering, and making other people suffer more and taking things away from a small group of people doesn't make anyone else's lives any better.
Well, you got me again because every I just get emotional thinking about it and the work that you were able to accomplish, and not just you, but your team of people, and how many years and how long that people have been working for a moment like that and a session like that where it does turn out in this positive way. Jennifer, I know you are not involved as much at that level, right? Like you're more of the average voter, citizen. You just voted in your first primary for the first time. So when you think about these issues and what's happening down at the Capitol and realizing it, now, especially. Like, do you feel that regular community members like yourself and your family, especially those in the LGBTQ plus community, are they cognizant of this kind of stuff that's happening? Is it kind of more under the radar and you're just living your lives like normal people, like we
I'd
all
say
do?
it I'd say it depends. It depends on how sneaky um
Okay.
these bills are, because sometimes and Noel can speak to this probably very eloquently, things are buried in bills that look
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, why wouldn't you support that? Or oh man, that's awful. Why would you support that? And things are buried in there. So when that happens, I'll be honest, like I didn't know there were 15.
Right, right.
Um, I think I knew of three. And that's as somebody that is in the community, that is starting to learn more about politics,
Mhm.
and wants to be informed. But there's also this crazy thing called life going on.
Right.
So when things are buried, no. I would say the average voter, the average person
Have no idea.
has no idea what is
Yeah,
happening. And if these things do get passed, they won't know until it starts impacting them. So
right.
the kind of work that Georgia Equality, people like Noel, that tirelessly dive into that find the sneaky stuff. Um, that is, I mean, that is invaluable. And that is work that I am personally so grateful for, because I know that there's a lot that I still need to learn.
Yeah. We're gonna shift gears just a little bit. We're going to talk about candidates that we had this primary season that are in the queer community. And there we got a friend, Erin Baker, who ran in House District 51, ultimately defeated, but had the smallest margin against an incumbent of any candidate, I believe, in the state from what I saw, trans woman. Um, and her campaign was absolutely incredible what they were able to accomplish. And I think that even with a loss, what she brought to the table, especially in the North Fulton area, and the conversations that she had were of tremendous value to the community as a whole. Um, but there was also Bentley Hudgens, who won their primary and is poised to become the first openly non-binary trans person and first Japanese American elected to the legislature. Noel, I don't know Bentley. I have not had the opportunity to meet them yet, but you worked alongside them. And so tell us what that candidacy looked like, the campaign, talk to me about that whole Bentley.
Yeah, I love Bentley on a personal level and as a candidate. So I'm excited to talk about them. So I've known Bentley for a number of years, met them in the community. And then, like you said, we worked alongside each other with me being at Georgia Equality and then being with the Human Rights Campaign. And so we've spent a lot of time down at the Capitol together for the highs and the lows. And so I know Bentley is the best person that I know from our community that is already poised and ready to be inside the Gold Dome. And I will say that 10 toes down because they have years of building relationships with folks that are already there.
Mhm.
And they have a super solid understanding of the process of how to identify those sneaky things Jennifer was talking about. They understand the language of the legislature, which is its own language. Like they are just so not just a great person, but they are highly skilled, highly educated, highly informed, and ready to go. And so I could not be more excited to support their campaign. And as a non binary person myself, I do consider identity and lived experience, but that's not what drives me to support a candidate. Contrary to what a lot of people might say, it's not just like, oh, there's a queer person, there's a trans person, I'm going to support everything they do 10 toes down. No, it doesn't work like that for me. It's about, oh, okay, you are from my community, so you do understand some of the attacks we've been going through. You do understand how to talk about our community. That's great. But what is your platform? What are your values? What are your plans? And so with Bentley, outside of LGBTQ plus actions, they have a long history of working for workers. They have a long history of understanding the labor movement. They have a long history of supporting voting rights and voter protections for every person. Like, these are things that are going to help everyone in and outside of the LGBTQ community. And one thing I'll say about Bentley is I was honored to go out and knock some doors with them and do some other things to support their campaign. And so Ari, my fiance, and I ended up at Bentley's watch party. I guess it was a couple weeks ago now. On May 19th, we ended up at their watch party, and I remember sitting there and waiting for them. You know, they had to wait a while until it was time for being able to call the race. It took some time, and so we're sitting there chatting, eating pizza, drinking, and I just kept waiting, and other people started to leave because it was getting really late. And
Yeah, Fulton was like after 11.
yeah, and a lot of people went home. They'd been there for like 4 or 5 hours. And I looked at my partner, who is a trans woman of color. And I looked at her and I said, "Do you want to go home?" And she said, "No, I really want to stay here until this race is called." And I said, "Me too." And we sat there, and eventually we saw Bentley come down. We were in Argosy, and they come down from the top of the stairs and come to the stage and start to say the words, "It looks like we are poised to have our first ever non-binary Japanese American in the Georgia State House." And I didn't even like realize it, but tears were just streaming down my face. I didn't even realize it was going to hit me like that. But as a person who had to watch, in 2024, millions of dollars spent to attack people like Bentley and I for our existence, for who we share with others, who we are, for just us being authentically ourselves, to see a person be voted in and supported by so many people in House District 90, to see Bentley, that they were able to see Bentley as a person, as a human, with the skills and talents and values that they want to represent HD 90, to see a non-binary person achieve that, and to know that there were enough people who were not even a part of our community that agreed that Bentley was the best person to represent them. That was so healing to me. It was such a powerful moment. And just like Erin Baker's campaign, which she ran so well, that campaign was so well ran, and she so deserved that win. But she and Bentley both are historic candidates for our time and have achieved more already than either of them realize. Like, their campaigns are just both so important. And I'm going to continue supporting Erin and can't wait to see what she does. And I can't wait to see Bentley get into the Georgia State Capitol and be in all those rooms for not just our community, but for every community they're going to represent and help.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. So, okay, so let's shift to the burrs, a little more focus on Roswell Empowered for the moment. Give us a layout of what all you've been able to accomplish in the last year as Roswell
Ooh.
Empowered, which is a ton, I know, but give us some of the highlights.
Well, we did like we said, the first Pride Walk, which, to say that that was the first Pride Walk ever in Roswell and it was 2025 is honestly insane. Um, and then, so I guess after that, I got super involved personally, with the municipal elections in Roswell, and which were very successful for the people
They
that we
were.
were gunning for. Um, and we hosted a town hall and we invited all the candidates. Roswell Empowered is 501(c)(3), so we're not able as an organization to endorse anybody. We can educate people on issues. And then from there, you can very obviously tell who would be supported. But we hosted a town hall, and I think that was probably the first event that we did that felt legitimate. It got people's attention that weren't just in the LGBTQ community. And we I mean, we got the sitting mayor to come and we didn't know if he would. So I was actually very happy that he came, knowing that he was probably coming in to a crowd that wasn't going to be
As
his favorite.
friendly.
So so it was kind of that was the first kind of legitimate I would say event that we had that was beyond LGBTQ. We did some smaller things. We did something called Fans for Families, where we collected money and fans and air conditioners for people living in the Roswell Housing Authority, which is in the Groveway community, because we found out that there were people there that for months did not have any air conditioning. And I don't know if you remember last summer, it was very hot.
God, yeah.
Um, and there are kids that live in there. So we were able to kind of partner with Groveway to help them. And you know, gearing up for coming into 2026, we held a pride prom on Valentine's Day
It
that
was
was
fun.
very, very cute. There were people there that had never danced with their partner at an event before because they had never been at an event where they felt like they could. So I cried the entire night watching that. And
I
now
just remember standing next to you at one point and you had tears in your eyes, and I was just like, look at what you've done.
yeah,
Take
I mean,
it
I don't
in.
even know how many times I cried that night. And I had many moments like that where I just stopped and just was staring at everything.
Good.
Because I wasn't sure if this was just a kooky idea for adults to have a prom, but the idea was is that a lot of us probably didn't get to go to prom with somebody we would have liked to. Some of us
Yeah.
probably didn't go at all. Um, so the idea that you get to go with somebody that you would actually like to dance with, and I did get to have a slow dance with Lyndsey. It was very cute. And so it was amazing doing things like that. And I would say that those are the most impactful things that we do is when people get to do something normal. Um,
Yeah.
like dancing with somebody that you love. And so that makes me extra excited for Pride coming up this time because it's going to be the first ever Pride festival in Roswell, which it's 2026, and to me that is still super
Wow.
crazy, but it's got to start somewhere.
That's right. That's right. So you mentioned talk working with municipal leaders and having them in for the forum and that kind of thing, but talk to me about what the initial people get scared of they don't know their government officials, especially at the local level. Many times it's this kind of well, people are doing it and I'm not thinking about it and it is what it is. But when you started to work with municipal leaders, was there pushback? Was there um, lessons learned? And since then, with new leadership, have you seen a change in how you're able to work with them? And do you have any tips for somebody that is wanting to work with their municipal leadership?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, yes, the biggest thing to remember is these are just people. I think that when you hear like mayor or city council member, you're like, whoa, that's somebody super, super important that I could never touch. No, they're at Kroger. Like you can talk to them anytime. They are our neighbors. They are regular people that live in the community. So I think that was something that I realized like, oh, these are just like regular people that want to do good things in the city. And yes, they're smart, they're qualified, they have drive, they're wonderful human beings, but
In
they're
many
just
cases. Yeah.
people. They're just people. So I think that that is the biggest thing is like if you want to get involved, it's actually really pretty easy.
Yeah.
You can go to a city council meeting and talk to them right before they get up there. There's this big fancy wooden desk that they're sitting at, but beforehand they're just standing around. And they're very easy to talk to.
And from the most of them that I've seen, they want to have the conversations. Like
They do.
they're
They
open to it.
do.
Yeah.
And that was something that was actually really cool and a common theme among the candidates that I would say probably all three of us supported. They wanted to talk to people.
Mhm.
They got excited to talk to people. They went out of their way to talk to people. I remember I gave a lady a ride to go vote when the mayoral runoff was happening. She needed a ride, 70-year-old lady that couldn't drive anymore. And one of the council members that had just gotten elected texted me. And you know, when you're in your car, on CarPlay, it pops up. So they saw their name and they were like, "You're texting with the incoming council member?" And I was like, "Yeah, she's just like a person." And I was like, "You could talk to her right now if you wanted to." So I think that that's the thing, is demystifying this, that they're untouchable.
Right.
Um, because I kind of assumed that myself. Like, they do press conferences, they have a fancy desk, they say the Pledge of Allegiance before they do everything. Like, it's like they're just regular people. So
Right.
it's actually super easy to get involved.
And to take the fear out of it of like, hey, like I have knowledge base of my own that may add value to a specific situation or something, and I shouldn't be scared to reach out. And that's something
Yeah.
I'm consistently trying to advocate for to the public as well, to that
Yeah.
as I try to get more people involved in local municipal politics, and not politics, but running of your local town and
I
understanding
think
what's going on.
the other thing that's
Yeah,
important to remember, and not to sound elitist, they work for us.
right.
And I
Great.
think we forget that
Yeah,
because they have this title, but they work for us. And I think the majority of the Roswell City Council and the mayor understand that, which is great. It gives me hope. And you had asked, now talking with them, I text with almost all of them.
yeah, same.
So it's remembering that to take the fear out of it, is that they work for us, the people.
It's a really great reminder. I'm gonna talk just for a minute, one question about allyship from both of you, and then we'll get into kind of celebratory celebrations that are going to be happening and end this on a really high note. So for those of us that are kind of new to this, we may not have a queer person in our lives or a trans person. And talk to me. We'll start with you, Noel. What can somebody do to understand better, to get to know this, to be an ally? What does that mean? And how do we get there?
That is a great question. We definitely need our allies. Everything that I talked about before, whether it be Bentley winning their race or defeating all 15 of the anti-LGBTQ plus bills, or just making the world a safer place for those of us in the community, we need allies more than ever. And so I appreciate, bringing that up. And a couple of things I would suggest is, number one, if you don't know a queer person, or if you want to know another queer person, people are welcome to get to know me. My Instagram is public, and you're more than welcome to find me at Noel, the number 4, Collective Liberation. And I post a lot of things to help people have an inside look into my life, probably more than I really should post, but I do it because I want to help with the storytelling piece. I want to help with the normalization piece. And I also give people opportunities to connect with the community and get involved and find ways to support. But besides that, I will mention the Georgia Equality website has a whole page dedicated to resources specifically for the trans community. Because what I do want to amplify is that while every single person in the LGBTQ plus community needs and deserves support, the T and the Q, specifically transgender people, are under the highest level of risk of violence, bullying, etc. right now. And so I want to make sure it's really clearly stated that in order to be an ally to the LGBTQ plus community, you must be an ally to the transgender community. And a lot of people, I think, are really comfortable at this point with gay couples, or, their uncle or their cousin that's gay. And I love that and I appreciate that. But just know that just because you don't know a trans person yet, the resources are out there, and that you really don't have to fully understand me or my partner or anyone else. Like, you don't have to fully understand us to know that we're a human being that deserves dignity and safety and the ability to self-determine what is the way that we need to live our life to thrive. And so I think that's the easy part, right? Is that simple and that hard of just understanding that there are human beings with differences, and that it's okay if you don't get it all. You don't have to. And I think too, some people have been fed this lie that, if you are supporting trans people and trying to be around trans people, that if you get their pronouns wrong and misgender them, that they're going to, lose their temper on you. And that's just factually, that's just not how it is. They may ask you, hey, I go by she, her. They may remind you of their pronouns. They may ask you to do better with it if they've already reminded you multiple times. But the people I know, and I know a lot of trans and gender expansive people, they aren't going to be mean. They're going to give you a chance to learn. And I think that's the last thing I'll mention. There's a lot I could say about this, but I'll just mention that to be an ally requires being willing to have humility. It requires the willingness to know that you won't always get it right. And I experienced this. I aim to be an anti-racist person. I desire to be a pro-Black person. But what that means is that as a white person, I am going to mess up sometimes. And that's the same for a person who's not LGBTQ plus, trying to be an ally to our community. That's okay. I appreciate you trying. So please just keep trying, keep learning, and keep being open to understanding how to be more of an ally.
Jennifer, I'm going to get a little more specific with yours with this, and more hyper local than I think most of our audience will understand. But we both know Council Member Zach, and he had a faux pas at a progressive women's meeting during his campaign, where he was asked about being an ally, and he was like, I wouldn't call myself that. And kind of there was a gasp in this room, and there was anger afterwards, and kind of like, what the hell, honestly. um and I think for him, in knowing him, he didn't quite, and I don't know if he still does understand the full, or what it means to be an ally, because even in talking with him more recently and knowing what a friend he's become to you and others in the community, or has been friends with others in the community for a lot longer, he still will say, like, they're my friend. Like, I'm not, what is, I still can't, I still have a hard time calling myself an ally. So what do you think of that whole piece of it? And yeah, just talk to me about what you think about that.
Yeah, so full transparency, I was in that meeting, I was in that room, and I was one of the people that was really mad. Um, and I let him know that I was really mad. Um, I think that in talking with him, and now especially actually knowing him, um, Mr. Zach likes to Google the definitions of things, and likes to look at the black and white definition of something. So I think that in his mind, if he wasn't out at marches, if he wasn't doing protests, if he wasn't going down to the Capitol and advocating, then he had no right to call himself an ally. Um, I have since explained to him, you don't have to be going down to the Capitol and doing protests to be an ally. He defended myself in rooms I wasn't in. He defended his opponent, who was in our community, in rooms that he was not in. I said, that's an ally.
Yeah.
And the fact that you don't understand and you're like, these are just my friends, like, this is not a big deal. you're an ally because
That's right.
you don't even understand um why it's a big deal. I think that to at the same time, to be a true ally, you have to be willing, like Noel said, to mess up
Mhm.
and learn when you mess up and correct when you mess up. And I do think that that is something that Chris has tried to do. And it's conversations that we've had, and it's something that he'll have to learn. And I told him to stop Googling the definitions of things, because it sometimes is not black and white.
That's right.
I think he Googled the definition of conservative at one point and got himself in hot water over that. And I'm like, please stop Googling
That's right.
the definitions of things because it's just making it
Not
worse.
everything.
So I think that sometimes people are like, I need to do X, Y, and Z to be a good ally. And yes, to be like a super ally, there's a ton you could do. But I think speaking up for people in rooms they're not in, being willing to learn and fix things. I mess up people's pronouns. I'm in the community and I mess up people's pronouns. I apologize and I get it right the next time. And that's really what it is. It's just believing that these people are people and deserve to be treated as people and defending them in rooms that they're not in or maybe don't even have the opportunity to be in.
Mhm.
Um, and I think Chris does that. He
I
just
do. I agree.
feels like he doesn't deserve the title ally.
Could I add one thing on this really
Please.
quick? Is that one thing I'm taking away because I don't know this person, but what I do know is that the word ally has become a little bit controversial in certain circles of
Okay.
I don't know if I have the right to claim to be an ally, kind of like what you were mentioning. And I think that the way that you know that you're an ally is if someone, hopefully multiple people from that community that know you tell you that you are. So, ally is not a word that you necessarily get to claim for yourself
Hmm.
until people in that community tell you that
Yeah.
your actions and words are making you one. And I know we probably have a wide array of folks who may, listen, that allyship is a starting point. And I hope that people understand that there is opportunities to be supportive and stand with us that are beyond allyship. But my
Amazing.
hope is that everyone can get into a place of allyship. And there is meaning in especially a government official saying, I am an ally to the community, because right now we are under such attack. It is important to be clear with one's words where one stands, right? So
Mhm.
there is an importance to that to say, whether you use the word ally or not, making it clear the LGBT community are my friends and I support them in being human and living their lives safely. So the word ally can bring up a lot of different thoughts and ideas, but there is a lot of value in understanding how one determines whether one is an ally or not.
Really solid eh, takeaway or addition to that so that we can find some clarity on that word that can be confusing to so many. All right. We're going into Pride Month. This will air in June, celebrating Pride Month. We know Atlanta's huge parade that's amazing is in October, our big Pride festival, because Lord knows it's hot as hell in June in Atlanta. But talk to me about some of the events that are happening in Atlanta for Pride Month, Noel.
Yeah, so there are a few different things that I will mention right now. The first one is there is a Pride Run happening on June 7th in the morning. The Atlanta Pride 5, or it's not sponsored by Atlanta Pride, but it is a Pride 5K and it benefits multiple organizations. One of them is Outfront Theater, which I am a big supporter of LGBTQ plus arts. And so Ari and I are both running in the Pride 5K in Atlanta on June 7th to help support Outfront Theater. They have lost some of their funding, and we want to make sure that queer theater stays a part of Atlanta. So please look out for their shows. They actually are having a really cool Wicked themed show during the month of June. So that is a great way to celebrate Pride, is by going to one of Outfront Theater shows. And then also, a really awesome way to celebrate Pride is on June 27th. Georgia Equality is having their annual gala, and it is a fundraiser for all of the work that we do year round. We're not just up at the Capitol, although that's a bulk of our work, but we are invested in communities across Georgia 365 days a year, and we need support. So June 27th, please mark your calendar, tell your friends. General admission tickets and whole tables are available on our website right now. So please go there, and I'd love to see you there. And then I will, yes, a lot of our bigger events down in Atlanta will be happening in October. And I have a personal announcement about Atlanta Pride that I cannot make yet. I'm
Oh,
not allowed. I'm not allowed to tell anyone yet. But
okay.
I am going to tell both of you when I can. I will be posting it on my Instagram as soon as I can, but I'm having to wait for that to be released. So, with that, I'm going to let
Oh,
Jennifer talk, because I know she has a lot more things happening in Roswell for Pride Month, and I want to give the rest of the time to her to talk about that.
yes. Shoot it at us, Jen. Let's
Well,
hear it.
I can't wait to see what this
I
announcement.
know. I'm like, ooh.
I'm I've forgotten everything that is happening in June now. I'm like, what is the announcement? But thank you. So there, yes, there's a lot happening in the immediate area for Pride. On the 6th, we have a Pride paddle cleanup. We've partnered with Chattahoochee River Keepers and some other really awesome LGBTQ plus community organizations. And so that's going to be hopping in kayaks and cleaning up the Chattahoochee. So you can follow Roswell Empowered on Instagram to get more information on that. And then the week of Pride in Roswell, we have just declared that it's Pride Week. And so on the Tuesday, the 9th, we have a Pride karaoke kickoff, and that'll be at 1920 Tavern at 7:30. They rearranged when they're doing karaoke, and I love that this is happening because I'm also a parent, and I think it's really real and fantastic, and I love you so much, Lyndsey. And so yes, Tuesday the 9th, come and sing at 1920 Tavern. It's going to be a ton of fun. The 10th, it is Pride Mini Golf Night at Aurora Theater's The Fringe. So they have two courses there, and they're making it a Pride night for us. And then just added, as of this morning, on Thursday the 11th at Second and Charles, we're having a game night. And they have a table there that they lovingly call a gable. And it has LGBTQ themed board games, including RuPaul Clue. So you come, bring your own folding chair. You can bring your own games too. So we'll have a game night on the 11th at Second and Charles. Friday the 12th is community banner nights. So at East Roswell Park at 5 o'clock, you can come and decorate the banner that will lead the Pride Walk the next morning. And then Saturday is the actual Pride Walk and Fest at Town Square Park in Roswell. So it's a packed week.
You put a lot of work into it, you and your board, and I'm really looking forward to it, and I know that it's going to bring in a lot more people from around. And it's not just a great, not just in Roswell, but from the surrounding areas as well. And it's also an economic driver too. You bring in all these people to celebrate and spread joy, and
Yeah.
it's helpful for the local businesses that are surrounding the area as well. So really appreciate what you're doing and what you've done for Roswell in particular. Noel, just in general, what a powerhouse you are. And I'm so grateful to have gotten to know you over the last couple years and added um, for me personally, you know those gay, some gay people, or you might know, your local gay couple or something like that. But being able to diversify my friend group in particular, and see the impact that they are having on the community and my life and my learnings and how I'm, teaching my kids and that kind of thing. It's been really fulfilling. Not to make this about me, but I just really realizing how colorful our communities are, and especially in the Atlanta metro area, Atlanta in particular, we're such a melting pot and diverse, and it's really amazing to see that it's that from the city out, it's growing and blossoming, and everybody's it's starting to become more normalized, like you mentioned earlier, Jen. So I want to thank you both tremendously for all the work that you've done, are doing, will continue to do. And just know that like Pride is a season to celebrate. It's celebrating those that are able to be here, celebrating um, you know, it, the survival of that community, because not everybody gets to come out of it that way because of how they have been treated. And so it really is looking at it like the humanity of all of us. And so, with that said, thank you both again. This has been Appen Media's Georgia Politics Podcast. I'm Lyndsey Coates. Can't wait for you to join us next time. Thank you.